In 1776, the Revolution was in its most perilous state. The Continental Army had sustained great losses from the Battle of White Plains and Fort Washington. As the colonies began to winter in one of the coldest recorded seasons yet, the soldiers marched on. The army's supplies dwindled, many soldiers going without shoes as George Washington led the revolutionaries to retreat in Pennsylvania. Morale for the army was dangerously low, and General Washington realized he needed a strong offense if his army would make it through the winter. In a sequence of winter wartime victories that would come to be known as the 10 Crucial Days, General Washington accomplished possibly the most amazing comeback in the Revolutionary War. From terrible losses over battles such as the Battle of Brooklyn to the turnaround of a war, these were the 10 Crucial Days. Day 1. On Christmas Day, over 2,000 soldiers belonging to the Continental Army crossed into New Jersey via the Delaware River at McConkey's Ferry. Following their arrival, they marched over 10 miles to begin a battle against over 1,500 Hessian troops. Hessians were German troops hired by the British forces to fight Continental resistance, and were a formidable opponent. By defeating them, George Washington hoped to boost his soldiers' morale, especially in the new year, which would see the biggest need for more recruits. Day 2. The Continental Army defeated the Hessians in Trenton at the Battle of Trenton. This was the first significant victory achieved by the Continental Army in the Revolution so far. The army took the Hessians completely by surprise, using a bad storm to cover their attack. Washington coordinated the assault on the Hessians in groups, one down the two main streets of Trenton from the northeast and the other along the river's road. Using cannons, the Continental Army thwarted the Hessians' ability to formate in the streets. 900 Hessians were captured following their attempted retreat from the battle within 90 minutes. They returned to Pennsylvania with only 5 less soldiers and much-needed goods for the encouraged army. Day 3. Washington, with his generals, crossed via the Delaware River into New Jersey. There they discovered that the enemy had withdrawn from the Trenton area. Day 4. At a Council of War convention, Washington and his generals planned to defeat Trenton from Cornwallis. Day 5. Continental Army crossed into Delaware at several ferry points and reconvened at Trenton. Day 6. The morale of the soldiers began to dwindle as the supplies gained from their victory ran out. Washington, in a bid to retain his army for the siege ahead, paid over half his soldiers to remain with the Continental Army for a further 6 weeks for $10 in hard corn each. Washington, with a force of 6,000, prepared a high ground south of Assunpink Creek in Trenton. Day 7. The Continental Army advanced from Trenton towards Princeton, occupied by enemy forces. Day 8. The Continental Army fought the British and Hessian troops in Princeton New Year's Day. Day 9. The Battle of Assunpink occurred. The Continental Army fought 8,000 British and Hessian troops under General Cornwallis. Cornwallis, recapturing Trenton, hoped to order charges on Washington's defenses. In retaliation, Washington's army fired volleys on the troops, punishing them with heavy British losses. Cornwallis held out all night, hoping to win in the morning. Under the cover of night, Washington ordered most of his army to Princeton, where he planned to surprise attack them. Washington cleverly kept some troops at Assunpink to create distractions and racket so that Cornwallis would believe that the Washington army remained at Trenton. Day 10. Overnight, Washington, with his troops, left Trenton and marched on Princeton. The initial point of contact at Princeton was along Stony Brook, where General Hugh Mercer led the Continental Corps, while British Colonel Charles Mauwood led his 55th Regiment towards Trenton. While crossing, the two sides spotted each other. Mauwood opened fire whilst the Americans came down the edge and followed with their bayonets. Washington led the Continentals and the militiamen against the British despite being outnumbered almost 4-1. After several volleys, the British were forced to retreat. Advancing on Princeton and setting up cannons facing Nassau Hall at the University of Princeton, the British were forced to surrender. The Battle of Princeton ended in a victory for the Continental Army and was the third and final triumph of the 10 Crucial Days. The impact of the 10 Crucial Days lasted much longer than Washington could have hoped. It is regarded as one of the greatest military offenses in history, George Otto Trevelyan having been quoted stating that it may be doubted whether so small a number of men ever employed so short a space of time with greater and more lasting effects upon the history of the world. In a perilous and freezing time when many armies would have seen their last stand, it's important to reflect on the perseverance of the Continental Army and General Washington, in the pursuit of freedom. Against incredible odds fighting an uphill battle, the 10 crucial days gave the Continental Army footing to oppose the British and ultimately win the fight for independence.